कोई कंफर्म कर सकते हैं कोई?
जी
अ,
जी दिख रहा है।
जज़ाकल्लाह। तो जो बुक मैंने पिक की है और पिछले 2 सेशन से मैं जो बुक के बारे में प्रेजेंट कर रहा हूँ, वो है जस्टिस ऑफ गॉड बाय आयतुल्लाह मकारिम शिराजी. So this is my third session, and as you can see, I have written a blog on Ali Book Club, which other presenters can also do if they like. And please let me know if you need any help understanding how to write a blog on Ali Book Club website. This is the blog for today's session. You can find other blogs I have written, which summarizes my previous sessions. So in today's session, I will cover these main topics, which you can see here on the screen: predestination, free will, the middle school of thought, and then a couple other topics related to justice of God. So beginning with the predestination, here Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi points to several important factors that can affect human human humans, like environment, education, propaganda, social culture, and why human beings act in a certain way. So it's the first factor that Ayatollah Shirazi discuss here is uh, so first, before going into those factors, I want to say, like, no one can deny the role played by the environment, culture, and economics in the thoughts and acts of human being. The discussion is that with all these motives, the final decision still remains with us. We are not obliged to deviate or go to the any bad habits. So many people who for here Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi says, like, many people who lives in the deviated culture, who inherits unsuitability, they still get separate from the others. They have arisen, they have revolted against their environment. So if a human being was supposed to be the child of his or her environmental culture, propaganda of time, then there would be no revolution. So all these shows that uh, the those factors do not play as much role as, like, one's principle or the main faith is determined by one's own free will. Here author gives one nice example, like, especially since we are fasting, it's quite relevant. If a person decide to fast in a very hot summer day, despite our body needing water, we would not be doing so, right, in order to obey God's command while denying our own needs. So does all motives which causes one's destiny exist within human beings' free will. So then author start discussing some of the factors that affect belief in the predestination. One of the the first factor author discuss is the political factor. So many of the despotic, selfish politicians or kings assure that in order to assure that the continuation of their illegal rule, they try to convince people through all means that uh, uh, that they have no free will. They were that predestination or predetermination of history holds our destiny in its hand. Even Yazid might have claimed at one time point that he was it was predestined to do all this. The second factor that Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi mentioned is psychological factor. So Ayatollah Shirazi says, like, lazy or indifferent or lethargic individuals exist who most often meet up with defeat in life. So they never desire to admit the bitter truth that their laziness or error has caused their defeat. So in order to avoid confronting themselves with the deficiencies, and developing themselves into better people, they instead turn to fatalism. They instead turn to like predestiny. So they think that their sins is result of coercive faith, so that they find a false sense of security. They say like most of these people say like, what can we do? It was all blackened from beginning. We have we were extremely talented, but and make we have made a great effort, but unfortunately we have no luck. So this is the second factor, psychological factor, that Ayatollah Shirazi discussed. The third factor in terms of predestination or fatalism is the social factor that Ayatollah Shirazi discussed. So here uh, Ayatollah says like some people want to be free to be able to follow their carnal desires. At the same time, they want somehow convince themselves that they are not sinners, and they want to deceive themselves. They want to deceive society that they are sinless. So it is here that they turn to fatalism as their justification that we have no free will. So they know very well that all these are lies. It's baseless, but their pleasures and passing fantasies do not allow them to admit the truth. Then, then Ayatollah Shirazi start discussing like why people believe in free will, why there is a collective conscience that free will exists. So Ayatollah Shirazi says like, how can it be accepted that human beings are obliged in their actions and they have no freedom of choice, but they are responsible by the law. So if religion, if God doesn't uh, allow any free will, then how can God punish you? So here Ayatollah Shirazi gives an example of like a stone, say like a stone falling. The law of gravity falls upon the roadside, and a human being is killed. And in the other way, like if a human being murder another person, they can't be tried the same way. Does the it that's it's a common thought, that it's a common uh, agreement that the free will exists. Then the author also like discuss like how the justice of God, how can we reconcile the justice of God, which we prove in which I have covered in the previous couple lessons, with the school of fatalism. How is it possible that God obliges someone to do an evil deed, then punishes him because he did that evil deed? This does not agree with any kind of logic. Then the author start discussing about the middle way. So on the one extreme, we have this fatalism or predestination, and then the other extreme, we have the school of conferring. So one who accepts this school believes that the God created us, but then uh, put everything at our disposal, and that in general he is not responsible for anything that we do, and in this way we are completely we have completely independent of in choosing what we do. So doubtlessly this belief does not agree with the monotheism. So the complete free will also is not does not agree with the monotheism. We cannot believe that the human beings who are free to do whatever they wish, completely and freely independent of even God. So the middle school of thought, what is in the middle school of thought, like it is important to know that human beings have freedom of choice and free will at the same time. We know that the God is the ruler over all people and deeds. So here Ayatollah Shirazi gives a very nice example. He says like uh, let us assume that there is an electric train and that is being driven by a train driver. So there are strong electric cables that being placed over the line of the train, and the train is connected with that with a link to that electric cable. So the electricity is passed to the locomotive in such a way that if even for just one moment, the electricity to the locomotive stops, the whole train will stop. Without doubt, the train driver is still free, right? He can stop when he wants, he can move at his own speed. But in spite of all this freedom, the person who sends the electricity can, can at any moment make the train stop, because all of the train's power and strength is coming from that electric cable. So the person who holds the key to the electric cable is in charge. So author says that what we note from this example with care, we see that one can have freedom while one is completely at the disposal of the power of another, that is the God. So these two concepts do not contradict with each other. A human being can have a free will and also uh, can be controlled. So God has given us physical power or strength, and from moment to moment it continues. And if it is cut off for even a moment, then our connection with Him will be cut off. We will be destroyed. So if we can do anything, it is because we have the strength which has been given to us, and it continues moment by moment. And every freedom and choice is also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is He, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed that we have the free will, and by making us of this great divine kindness, one can transform oneself. So it is the free will is granted to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So thus, at the same time that we have free choice and free will, we are also in His grasp. So uh, so here Ayatollah Shirazi quotes one of the hadiths. Uh, we have learned lessons from the pure imams. So, so from Al Kafi, whenever they were asked, does anything exist between fatalism and conferring? So, whenever imams were asked, like, does anything exist between fatalism and conferring? Then Imam used to say, yes, more extensive than distance between heavens and earth. So then Ayatollah Shirazi quotes few ayats from few verses from Holy Quran about the free will, and all these verses which speaks of blame and reproach against evil doers and praising the good doers are the proof that the free will are the proof of the free will. Because if one is destined to do whatever one did, blame or praise would make no sense, right? So if someone was predestined to do something, then there is then the blame or the praise doesn't make sense. So all these verses which speaks about like reward, punishment, shows that it's uh, things are not predestined. So Ayatollah Shirazi quotes a few ayats from Holy Quran here. Then coming to the subject of like the means of guidance. So the, guidance, and so there is another concept of like guidance and error, hidayat uh, uh, और जलालत दोनों भी खुदा के हाथ में है. So the means of guidance. So here Ayatollah Shirazi gives one example. Say like there is a traveler who asks for an address. He meets you and he asks you for help to find some address. So you have two options here. You can either uh, first go with him completely uh, by accompanying him to the destination, and then say like goodbye to him and leave him. The second option is like you just show him the directions and he goes to his destination. So we read many of the verses in Holy Quran that the guidance and leading astray is God's work. Doubtlessly, the indication of the way comes from God. Why? Because He sent prophets, He sent heavenly books to show us the way. But reaching the goal through through coercion or the force clearly does not agree with the free will. However, because all power and strength which is necessary to reach one's goal is given to us by God. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us guidance, but to reach that goal, to reach the destination, we have to make use of our energy, our power, strengths, which is again granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then the last question here is about the question of uh, God's guidance. So there is an ayat from Surah Ibrahim which says like God guides whom He wills and misguides whom He wills. So the question arises like if God guides whom He wills and mislead whom He wills, what are we supposed to do in the middle? So this important point is that the verse of Holy Quran must always be studied in relation to other verses in order to understand the truth. So here we recall some of the other verses about guidance and leading astray so that we can study them in relation to this verse. So Ayatollah Shirazi quotes few other verses to study this verse along with them. So the verse from Surah Mumin that says like, thus do God leaves to astray, such as transgressors, and leave in doubt. So, and then another verse from Surah Ankabut, and those who strive in our cause, we will certainly guide them to our path. And verily God is with those who do right. So these two verses, uh, those who indicates that those who undertake the jihad or upon God's way, war with difficulties, and shows strength and firmness of purpose, have been promised guidance, and this is justice because they are striving in God's way. So that's why the God guides them to the right path. But those who create oppression or suppression and those who take steps towards extravagance, doubt, injustice, uh, God takes uh, away the possibility of guidance from them. So uh, then the last subject here that Ayatollah Shirazi has covered in this short book is about about God's knowledge. Does God uh, knows that so and so at such a time and such a day will kill someone or will drink an alcohol beverage or do some wrong evil deed? So if we say like he does not know, then we have denied God's knowledge. And if we say yes, that person then that person must do this, otherwise God's knowledge will be imperfect. So if we say like God knows this, then that person has to do this, otherwise God's knowledge will be imperfect. So then in order to preserve God's knowledge, a person is obliged to sin and obey God, right? So so do we accept that a person sinning uh, has this knowledge exists with God or does not exist? So here he gives an example of a teacher. Ayatollah Shirazi gives an example of a teacher who knows that a lazy student will fail at the end of the year, and teacher is 100% sure that this fact about this fact, but because of the years, and he is 100% sure because of the years of experience that teacher has. So when a student fail, can a student take that teacher and say like your knowledge and what you foresaw caused me to fail? We can't say that, right? So it's the same way that although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what a person will do, what a person when a person will sin, go for a sin, it doesn't mean that we are obliged to do the sin. So these are the few topics that I would like to cover in this last session about this book, uh, Justice of God.